Hello, everyone. All right, so I think most of you should know me, but my name is David. I'm the intern under Andrew here at Brightview Church, working towards youth ministry. And so Chris and Andrew asked me today to share a little bit of my story and why I felt called to ministry. So bear with me, I don't talk on stage very much, so it'll be a learning experience. But I want to start with a Bible verse that popped out to me as I was doing some reading the other day, and then shortly after I got asked about this, and I thought it actually summed up a lot of my story really well, was Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. My childhood is much like many others who've grown up in the church. I attended church on Sunday. We prayed at every meal, and once I was old enough, I attended youth group every week. I considered myself a good Christian, and I thought I was doing enough. And this attitude to my faith was one that continued on through, most of the way into my high school years. And probably would have continued had there not been changes in my life. Near the end of my junior high schooling years, my parents divorced. And to me, that had always seemed like something that happened to everyone else. That happened to everyone else's parents and everyone else's families, but not your own. And the realization that it happened to my family and that my life was changing was one that I couldn't grasp. The faith I had at the time was one that was very much acting right and doing the right things, but not necessarily one of knowing God. And so when we hit this challenging time, I found I didn't have anything to go back to fall back on, and I very quickly became discouraged. I kept attending church. I kept attending youth group because my family was going and my friends were going to youth group, and it would have been weird to not go. But that was about the only reason. And my time in the Word and my time in prayer during this time very much struggled. It made me very aware that I had a lot of growing I needed to do. And for me, with the apathetic view of my faith that I was at that time, I found myself walking from God. I didn't want to believe that a good God would let this happen, and I didn't see how it would happen in my life. And so I tried to find other things. I looked at other things. I was like, well, maybe I'll be an atheist, and then I decided I didn't think that made sense. Pretty quickly. As soon as I tried to find other things, I found that all around me, I could see God working. I'm like, I don't see how that would happen without this. All these other things. God kept putting people or events in my life in ways that showed me he was working. And at the time, I was kind of annoyed by this because, this is the exact opposite of what I want. And I was upset because I couldn't seem to see him working in my life. I saw him working around me, but I couldn't see him working personally in my life. But looking back now, I see that it wasn't God that wasn't working in my life. It was me refusing to listen and acknowledge the ways that he was working in my life. A key area that I found God worked a lot in my life, and part of the reason I decided to work in youth ministry, is an area God worked a lot in my life was at youth group. In my time at youth, even in the challenges and everything I was facing, I was surrounded by a group of friends who were all attending youth and were all learning the same things, a group of leaders who were working into our lives, and people who had genuine relationships with God. And seeing them live out their faith in a personal and substantial way helped me realize that there was a lot more to faith than just doing the right things. And that realization, seeing the ways Christ was working in me, I began to recognize that he wasn't just working around me, but he was working in my own life. And I was encouraged in this by leaders and by those around me and my family, who are still working their best at teaching us the right things to do. My return to faith was a slow process, but a big theme I found in my life was learning to listen, to not just reading the Bible and taking it at its face value, but actually learning to listen to those prompts that God's put in our life, those people God's put in our life the community around us. And it was a slow one. It's hard, and I had to learn how to have a personal relationship with Christ. This slow process continued through high school, and even shortly, it's still continuing. But after high school, I had an opportunity to step into a leadership role at the youth group here. So I was the grade 7-8 boys small group leader, and I had an opportunity to not just grow in my faith, and to help others to grow in their faith. It was one of those decisions where it was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I should volunteer somewhere. And I'd been benefited by the youth, and I decided that it was an area I knew well enough that I could step into. However, at this time, I hadn't considered it as anything more than a Friday thing. It was kind of that, fill kind of the quota on doing something Christian in a week, and come step in and help them. And it was really exciting on Fridays, but at the same time, it wasn't changing me at all. I wasn't letting it change me. I hadn't noticed a calling at this time. And so I was trying to figure something out, and I couldn't find what I was being called to. And so I was exploring a few things. I looked into being an air traffic controller and got really sick of the testing really quickly. I looked into doing mechanics, and then got laid off after 3 months. And I was finding myself in a place where I was like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I thought I had a plan, and all of a sudden that plan got mixed up, and a whole assortment of things were going wrong. I was running out of money. I was living by myself at the time and finding that I very quickly just didn't have a plan, and I didn't know where to go. And it was at that time that I had a few people begin to speak into my life. A bunch all at once, actually. I had people, Andrew had mentioned actually at the time, that maybe I should think about ministry. And at the time it was like, well, I'm not going to do that. That's for someone else. And very quickly I was like, well, I'm going to go keep looking at other things. And so I did that for a little bit, and quickly ran into barriers at every place I'd looked. I wasn't finding a job. I didn't have the money to go to school. I was very quickly realizing that those weren't directions that I was going to be able to go at this time. And all of a sudden, I had a realization that I could not take those other options on my own. And so I thought about it a little bit more. I'm like, well, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about youth. I'm passionate about that. Maybe I should consider this. And then again decided that I didn't want to do it, and that I couldn't afford it, and that I wasn't feeling called to it. And I almost quit. I almost gave up on the idea right there. And over the next week, I had multiple people ask me. Multiple people came up to me and said, unprompted, hadn't had a conversation with them about it, and just said, hey, have you considered this? This seems to be something you're passionate about. It seems to be something you're good at. And you seem like you'd be cut out for teaching. And I was like, well, I had considered it. Why is this happening? But I kept coming back to, I can't afford school. And if I'm going to do that, I need school. So, well, clearly that's not the plan right now. I didn't have a job. I didn't see a school that I could afford. And all of a sudden, over that same week, I had someone contact me about a job, say, we have work for you, and we'd be happy to hire you on. We know you by proxy. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, I can get a job. And then Andrew, again, we went to a youth leaders conference, and he found a program called the Coalition. And the Coalition is a program designed for youth workers to get practical experience at an affordable rate, which is really ideal because I wanted to learn and I wanted to be able to afford to learn. And so it made it very accessible for me to do it. I hadn't fully decided this at this time. I was like, things are working out, but is this what I want? And I decided that I should pray on it and that I should actually consider, am I being led to this? Am I feeling God calling me to this? And so I was doing a Devo, I was reading, and I'd been praying on this, and I had a Bible verse, again, jump out to me. John 14:13 and 14. We'd actually read it in young adults we'd read through John shortly before that, and I'd read this verse then and thought it was interesting. And it jumped out to me a second time. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. It stuck out to me because the entire time I'd been saying that I can't do this. I don't have this that I need. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this verse and I'm like, every time I was hitting one of these walls, Christ was saying, I can do this. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. And according to Christ's plan and his calling, he was providing. So, where am I? Yeah, very quickly, I began to see that things had worked out for a reason. I wouldn't have looked at youth ministry if I hadn't gotten fired from the job. I wouldn't have looked into programs if I hadn't been out of work. And I wasn't planning on getting this job, but it worked out really well that they had worked for me up until I would be starting the program and have continued to have worked for me part-time. And I'm now into my second semester of the coalition classes. I actually start my next week of classes Monday. And I've been blessed by the support of this community and by the support of the coalition program, and I've been blessed by the opportunity to step into leadership and to continue to grow.